The Lona, Trail of Blood, Chapter 11 and 12. Conrad instantly grasped what Futura was trying to do. The doctor didn't want any kind of scandal to threaten his lucrative business. By claiming Conrad was insane, Futura could get away with locking him up and keeping him a prisoner in the sanitarium, perhaps forever. He knew Conrad no longer had any relatives in Boston to dispute the claim. As he whirled around to face the three orderlies, Conrad was aware he was fighting not only for his freedom, but for his very life. Once he was a patient there, it would be easy for Fortrell to dispose of him without anyone knowing about it. As the orderlies lunged at him, Conrad's hands flashed underneath his coat and came out filled with the lightnings. "Stay where you are." The men came to awkward, skidding halts as they looked down the barrels of those revolvers. Conrad heard movement behind him and looked around. Futura was coming at him, swinging a heavy glass ashtray he had snatched up from the desk. The doctor had quite a bit of strength in his short, stocky body and smashed the ashtray against the side of Conrad's head with stunning force. He went down on one knee. One of the orderlies leaped forward and grabbed his right arm, wrenching the gun aside. Another man went for his left arm. Pain shot through Conrad's shoulder as the orderly tried to twist the arm out of its socket. The third orderly closed in from the front. The way the three of them moved in tandem told Conrad they had plenty of experience at dealing with violent patients. Unless he broke free quickly, they would overpower him and all would be lost. He would never find his children. He let his weight sag so the two men who had seized him were holding him up. Pulling both legs up, he snapped them out in a savage double kick that sunk the heels of his boots deep into the belly of the third orderly. The man grunted in pain, doubled over, and blundered right into his companion, who was holding Conrad's right arm. That loosened the man's grip enough for Conrad to pull free. He twisted his body and hooked a foot behind the knee of the man holding his left arm. A quick jerk upset that man, and suddenly everyone in the office was on the floor except for Dr. Futura, who danced around nervously, still holding the ashtray as if he wanted to hit Conrad with it again. Conrad surged to his knees. One of the orderlies tried to grapple with him again. From the corner of his eye, Conrad saw Futura rush in and swung the ashtray at him. He jerked his head aside. Futura's momentum carried him forward, and the blow smashed into the orderly's face, crushing the man's nose and shattering cheekbones. Blood spurted as the orderly hauled in pain and fell forward, clutching at his ruined face. The man Conrad had kicked in the stomach was lying curled up on his side, moaning in agony at the damage done to his gut. The one with the broken nose was hurting too much to worry about anything else. That just left just one orderly and Mr. Dr. Futura for Conrad to deal with. He rolled to his feet and realized he still had the guns in his hands. As the remaining orderly tried to scramble up, Conrad pointed one of the lightnings at his face and said, "Don't." He leveled the other .38 at Futura, who had backed off and stood against one of the bookshelves, his face pale and his chest heaving with fear. Don't shoot me," the doctor babbled. "Please don't kill me. I'm sorry about the children. I reckon you figured out by now that I don't have a whole lot left to lose, Doc." Conrad didn't realize until later how much that sounded like something Kid Morgan would say. "Were you telling me the truth about the twins?" Yes, I swear it," the orderly asked. "What twins?" "That's none of your business," Futura snapped at the man, some of his imperious attitude coming back now that he was talking to an underlining. "And the records?" Conrad asked. I already told you Miss Tarleton took them with her when she left with her maid and those men. The man who was in charge, do you remember what he looked like? Not that well. It was years ago. You have to understand. All I recall is that he had dark hair and he wasn't very big, but he was frightening. I looked in his eyes and I felt like a bug on a sidewalk, like he could step on me and crush the life out of me and never feel a thing about it. Fairchild swallowed. His eyes, I remember now, they were a very pale blue-gray, like the color of ice. Conrad nodded. Pamela didn't call him by name? Never. Not that I heard. Conrad was convinced Fairchild was telling the truth. The man was too scared to lie. Conrad nodded and backed towards the open double doors. He hoisted the left-hand gun and picked up his hat, which had fallen on the floor. The two injured men continued to groan. The other orderly looked like he wanted to tear Conrad's head off, but he was smart enough to know he would get a bullet for his trouble if he tried. Here's what you're going to do, Fairchild, Conrad went on. You're going to take excellent care of those men, because it's your fault they're hurt. They can stay here in your hospital for as long as they need to, at your expense. Do you understand? The doctor bobbed his head. Of course. If I hear otherwise, and I will hear about it, if you don't do what I tell you, I'll be back. You don't want that. Wordlessly, Fairchild shook his head. You're not going to say anything to the police about what's happened here, and you'll make sure your staff doesn't say anything. Conrad glanced at the third orderly. By the way, I'm not insane, and I'm not just saying that because it's what a lunatic would say. Your boss wanted me locked up because he didn't want me going around talking about what really goes on in here. Fairchild managed to lift his chin in a show of defiance and anger. I've broken no laws, he insisted. Everything I've ever done in this institution has been perfectly legal. Sometimes there's a difference between legal and right, and you know it, Conrad snapped. Anyway, I don't have any interest in putting you out of business, Fairchild. I came here for information, that's all. We're finished, you and I, as long as you do what I told you. Let's keep it that way. Fairchild swallowed again and nodded. Yes, I agreed. Don't push any more buttons or have your staff try to stop me on my way out of here. Fairchild waved a hand. Just go, he said bitterly. No one will try to stop you. Conrad gave him a curt nod and backed through the doorway. As he turned to walk quickly along the corridor, along the entrance, he put the hand holding the gun under his coat, but he didn't holster the .38, not until he was outside in the sunlight again. Clancy was waiting for him, leaning against the carriage. The big Irishman straightened. A frown creased his broad forehead as he said, Ye look a wee bit rumpled, sir. Trouble inside? A little, Conrad admitted, but I found out what I wanted to know. Let's get back to the hotel. Clancy opened the carriage door. Hey, to tell you the truth, I'll be glad to get away from this place. I was just standing here looking at the bars and the windows, and I got to admit, it made me a bit nervous, like standing outside a prison. Conrad looked at the building and exactly just how close it had come to being exactly that for him. You're not wrong, far wrong, he murmured. Let's go, Clancy. Chapter 12. Back at the hotel, Conrad filled Arturo in on what he had discovered at the sanatorium. It was a close call, he concluded. Fairchild could have claimed I was crazy and kept me locked up there from now on. Doubtful, sir, Arturo said. For one thing, I know you're sane, and so does Mr. Mallory. We would have taken action on your behalf. No offense, Arturo, but I'm not sure the word of a valet and a shamus would carry enough weight against a man like Fairchild to do any good. None taken, sir. In that case, I would have simply gotten in touch with your father and told him you had disappeared. Even though I've never met Frank Morgan, I suspect he would not have allowed the situation to go unchallenged. Conrad grinned at the thought. Frank Morgan had come to Boston once before to right a wrong, and Conrad had no doubt Frank would have answered Arturiel's summons, much to the regret of Dr. Vernon Fairtrail. We don't have to worry about that, Conrad said. Fairtrail has enough sense to keep his mouth shut. What if he tries to make sure your mouth is shut permanently? You mean if he hires somebody to kill me? Conrad shrugged. Wouldn't be the first time, now would it? I'm pretty hard to kill. He hoped that continued to be true. By the time evening rolled around, Conrad was dressed in clothes he had sent Artur out to buy at a second-hand shop. The gray tweed suit was threadbare, and Conrad preferred not to think about the origin of the stains on it here and there. Under it, he wore a dingy work shirt and no tie. Brogans with holes in the soles were on his feet. Arturo handed him a working man's cap and watched critically as Conrad pulled it down his sandy hair. Sir, you look positively disreputable, Conrad smiled. Good. Maybe I won't look too out of place at Sereno's. You wouldn't look out of place in the back of a police wagon either. What is it they call them? Black Marias? Something like that. He was only going to carry one lightning, since the coat wasn't cut to conceal either the shoulder harness or the cross-drawer rig that belted around his waist. He checked the revolver, made sure the hammer was resting on the lone empty chamber, and tucked it behind his belt, at the small of his back. A knock sounded on the door of the suite. Conrad said quietly, You can answer that while I get out of sight in case it's not Mallory. He stepped into his bedroom while Arturo went to the door. A moment later, the valet called through the open doorway. It's all right, sir. It's the gentleman you were expecting. Mallory wore a button-up overcoat, despite the season not warranting it, and he had a neatly creased fedora on his head. He took off the overcoat to reveal that he was dressed in old, well-worn clothes like Conrad. He brought a flattened derby from under his hat and punched it into shape. It looked like it had been knocked off and stepped on in numerous barroom brawls. If he had worn the garb openly into the hotel's lobby, he never would have been allowed upstairs. The two men nodded in approval of each other's outfit. Nobody will pay much attention to us in a dive like Sereno's, Mallory said. Conrad asked, Are you armed? Mallory reached into one pocket and brought out a black heavy sack. Another pocket produced a pair of brass knuckles. And if that's not enough, the detective stowed those items away. I've got this too. He brought out a razor that he opened with a flick of his wrist. The obviously keen blade glittered in the lamplight. Excellent, Conrad said with a nod. I have a .38. I hope we won't need it. We don't want to get in a shootout with Murtaugh and his boys. They'll outnumber us, and they're lads who don't shoot to wound. Mallory paused. What is it you intend to do anyway? You just can't ask Murtaugh who hired him to kill you. I don't know, Conrad admitted. I'll figure that out when we get there. Mallory shrugged. I ought to have my head examined for going along with a crazy scheme like this. I know a place where you could have that done, Conrad told him, smiling. Not the Fairtrail Sanatorium. Once he got you in there, though, he might not let you out again. Mallory frowned. What do you mean by that? What happened over there this afternoon? Conrad told him about the conversation in the Fairtrail's office and the violence that had resulted. When he was finished, Mallory said, Somebody needs to take that man down a notch or two. I promised to leave him alone if he went along with what I said. Mallory rubbed his angular jaw. Yeah, but I didn't. I'll keep keeping an eye on him from now on. I don't think that would hurt a thing. A short time later, they were ready to go. Before they left the hotel room, Arturo asked, "Would it be any good to tell you to be careful?" "Probably not," Conrad said. He and Mallory waited until the hotel corridor was clear of guests and staff, then walked quickly to a set of service stairs and went down, leaving the hotel through a rear entrance used by employees. Once they were outside, they caught a streetcar that took them to the north end of Boston, within walking distance of the dangerous neighborhood where Sereno's Tavern was located. "Keep your wits about you," Mallory warned as he and Conrad walked along the narrow streets. "The ITs aren't that fond of mix like me, and they'll likely take you for one too." "How does Murtagh get away with making Sereno's his headquarters? He's always surrounded by plenty of tough boyos who can shoot fast and straight, and Eddie Murtagh likes living dangerously. He and Sereno have a truce, but it's a delicate one." Conrad was aware of hostile stares and glances directed toward him and Mallory by the people they passed on the street, but no one tried to stop them. A few minutes later, they came to Sereno's, an old frame building with large, dingy front windows covered by heavy curtains. When they went in, they found themselves in a foyer where two large men lounged, passing a jug of some sort of liquor back and forth. They were obviously guards and came to their feet as Conrad and Mallory entered. "What do you want here, Irish?" one of the men asked as he thrust his jaw belligerently at Mallory. Conrad answered, "We're looking for Eddie Murtagh." "No mix here," the other guard snapped. "Go back to the south side." Conrad shrugged. "All right, but Murtagh won't be happy when he finds out you cost him some money." "What sort of money?" "The sort you can spend." The man moved closer to him, hands clenching into fists. "I don't like funny Irishmen. They ain't funny. Just go to Murtagh that Futrell sent us," Conrad said. "Who the hell is Futrell?" "He'll know." Conrad had no idea if Murtagh knew who Dr. Futrell was, but it seemed like a worthwhile gamble. If Murtagh was connected somehow with Pamela, he might know where she had gone to give birth to the twins. The guards thought it over. They looked at each other and one of them shrugged. The other nodded and turned to go through a closed door on the other side of the foyer. Then the moment it was open, Conrad heard piano music coming from inside, along with talk and laughter. The guard who was left slipped a hand into a coat pocket. Conrad was pretty sure the man was ripping a gun. The other man came back a couple of minutes later. "Sereno says let them in," he reported. "But if they cause any problems out, they go on their Irish asses." "Fair enough," Conrad said. He and Mallory went on through the foyer into the Tavern's main room. It was dim and smoky, an Eastern version of the sort of squalid Western saloon Conrad had seen more than once. A man wearing an apron over his vest and trousers got in their path. His nose was big and impressive, and his dark eyes sparkled with menace. "I'm Sereno," he growled. "What do you want with Eddie Murtagh?" "I have a business deal I want to offer him," Conrad said. Sereno was every bit as big and brawny as Mallory. He looked like he could break most men in half without really trying. He jerked his head toward a door. "In there, but tell Murtagh I don't like him doing business here. He can come here and drink, but he needs to keep his business elsewhere." Conrad nodded. "I'll tell him. I'll go first. Otherwise you're liable to get shot, and it's hard enough keeping this place clean without a lot of blood on the floor." Sereno led them to the door and knocked on it. A rough voice from the other side of the panel asked, "Who is it?" "Serena. Murtagh has visitors." The door opened a little. "No shooting. Got it?" Sereno said. "Come on in, laddies," the voice said, and something about it reminded Conrad of death. It was like being invited into a grave. He and Mallory stepped into a room lit by a couple of lamps that had been turned down low. 4 men were in the room. The one who had answered the door was as confident as his voice. 2 men sat at a table with glasses and a half-empty bottle of wine in front of them. The fourth man was stretched out on a sofa, his ankles crossed and a lit cigarette dangling from his mouth. He held a huge revolver on his chest that looked like a miniature canyon. One of the men at the table was smoking too. He set around the cigarette between his lips. "Thanks, Sereno." The tavern owner lifted a finger. "No trouble. No trouble," the man at the table promised. His voice was soft, but so was the hiss of a snake, Conrad thought. As the door closed behind Sereno, the man looked at the 2 visitors and asked, "What can I do for you lads?" "Dr. Futrell sent us." Conrad moved a step closer to the table. The gaunt man who had let them into the room slid a hand out from under his coat, revealing a big revolver. It looked heavy enough that the weight seemed to be more than his spindly arms ought to be able to support, but he handled the weapon like it was a toy. Conrad was close enough to see the eyes of the man at the table. They wore a very pale bluish gray like chips of ice, and the man's hair, which was brushed back thickly from his forehead, was as black as midnight. Here was Eddie Murtaugh, Conrad thought, and Murtaugh was the man who had been with Pamela when she left the sanitarium with the children. His children, Conrad thought, putting more steel in his spine. "Who's Futrell?" Murtaugh asked. "You know who he is," Conrad answered confidently, "and you have something that belongs to him. He wants those records back that Miss Tarleton took with her." Slowly, Murtaugh shook his head. "Who makes you think I know anything about any records? And who's Miss Tarleton?" "You know perfectly well who she is. She's the one who paid you 3 years ago to get rid of anyone who showed up looking for her, especially her ex-fiancé, Conrad Browning." "I still don't know what you're talking about," Murtaugh insisted, "and you're beginning to bore me. Not to mention you worried my friend Sereno. I think you should leave now." "Not without those records you took from Futrell's sanitarium, unless Miss Tarleton destroyed them." Murtaugh didn't respond to that. He poured wine from the bottle into his glass and said to the other man at the table, "Get them out of here. If they give you any trouble, kill them." The man put his hands on the table and started to heave himself to his feet. Mallory was starting to look pretty worried. He was about to get even more worried, Conrad thought, before Murtaugh's companion could get up. Conrad's hands swept his coat back, pulled the .38 from behind his belt, and lined it up to Eddie Murtaugh's face. "Those were my children, you bastard, and unless you tell me what happened to them, I don't care if I walk out of here alive."